Well, okay. Welcome again. Let's try that again. Sorry. Not really sure what happened. It was just giving me the some kind of loading technical difficulty, but that's all right. It's a good thing it did it at a really good time where we basically hadn't progressed at all as far as the stream goes. So, real easy to just say do over. So, there we go. So, welcome back, everybody. What are you going to do, huh? The world has its flaws from time to time, and live streaming on YouTube is no exception. Sound check. Are you there? Sound. Yep. Check. Nice. Okay. So welcome back, everybody. This is Jay Baldell. Sorry about that little hiccup, but again, at least it was in a good place to do it instead of like halfway into the stream. So let's just get the sound going again, the music going again, the chat pulled up. My Gnosis, I wished you a congrats on your baby boy. And so I'll wish you a congrats again since that other one is going into the trash bin. Like I said before, hopefully you're learning your lessons in life for better or for worse, what you need to keep and integrate into your life that all of you guys are doing, what you need to dispose of, you're disposing of. And it's a process. So, like they say, trust the process. All right, then. Now we're looking good. Welcome, everyone. Mad love to everyone. Welcome to my channel. This is Jay Baldell. I said that, but I'm saying it again. So let's pull a tarot card real quick and then let's get into this book. Today is going to be a fun one. It's all been pretty fun. So far, this book has been rather enjoyable. Even though it's a bit older, still got some wonderful things to be extracted. All right, Tarot. Happy Tuesday to all of us. I hope you all had a good weekend. I wish you one already, but since I don't think a whole lot of people are going to know that that happened, I once again, I hope you had a wonderful weekend. I sure did. A lot of fun. Always good to spend time with the people in life who mean the most to you. So don't be afraid of making relationships. Don't be afraid of maybe hanging with people you haven't seen in a while, family, friends, whoever. Because unless you're getting all up your own rear end and drinking your own Kool-Aid about that you're some esoteric high-level wizard, yada, yada, all that BS, then shouldn't really make a difference like what type of time they're on if they're people who actually matter to you. And it can often be a very good learning experience. So, hey. All right. Cut the deck. It's that card there, and it's a swords. Oh, nope. The devil. Well, that's kind of like the swords. That's kind of like the sword in a sense. So, the devil on a Tuesday, isn't it? Well, well, well. We got to meet him from time to time. So, like I just said, maybe you'll meet him in like a way you're not expecting or anticipating. Charlie Plex, welcome in, says, what a joke. What is? I don't think I told a joke, did I? All right. So, yeah, maybe. See, what? Charlie Plex, thanks for proving my point. So, yep, you might encounter that devil at any old time that you're not really quite expecting, and he takes many shapes and forms. Here we see kind of a hidden sexual aspect. So really, like that devil takes all kinds of shapes and forms, like we learned from the Buddhist teachings, Mara. Treachery by any means is fair play when it comes to this character here. So take a look around your life and see what ways you think that devil might be pulling the wool over your eyes. He might be lulling you into a fanciful type of charade, a fanciful type of dance. Or maybe it's something as simple as like what I just said. Maybe like you feel like, oh, I can't relate anymore to the people in my life. Oh, I'm so advanced and such a high level wizard. I just can't relate with anybody. Grow up. Go hang out with your friends. Go hang out with your family. That's the devil. That's the devil telling you those things. That's not truth. That's false. Maybe some of them, sure. I mean, I get that some people can be kind of ridiculous, but also, again, what type of magician are you actually when you just ignore the world around you for better or for worse? Oyan, Hebrew letter Oyan, the eye, Capricorn, the goat. Well, Capricorn is has a lot of resolve, especially when it comes to the material plane. The kingdom of the devil, right? Prince of the earth, as they say. Or that eye. Well, is that eye playing tricks on you? Whether it's the two in your face or the one in your mind. All right. Well, I think that's what needs to be said about this devil card here. And that's going to do it for the day on the tarot. So let's get into some transcendental magic. Oh, too far. That's the chapter 8 in the back. We want the chapter 8 in the front. And these are both pretty short ones, especially the ritual part. So it might be a little quicker stream today. Okay. So chapter 8 of the Doctrine, which is Het and the letter H. Those don't match. Okay, and there's a footnote right there saying 8 is the number of reaction and of equilibrating justice. From La Clef de Grand Mystery. All right, realization. Hod vivens. Causes manifest by effects, and effects are proportioned to causes. The divine word, the one word, the tetragram, is self-affirmed by tetratic creation. Human fecundity proves divine fecundity. The yod of the divine name is the eternal virility of the first principle. Man understands that he was made in the image of God when he attains comprehension of God by increasing to infinity the idea which he forms of himself. When realizing God as the infinite man, man says unto himself, I am the finite God. Magic differs from mysticism because it judges nothing a priori until after it has established a posteriori the actual base of its judgments. That is to say, after having apprehended the cause by the effects contained in the energy of the cause itself by means of the universal law of analogy. Hence, in the occult sciences, all is real, and theories are established only on the foundations of experience. Realities alone constitute the proportions of the ideal, and the magus admits nothing as certain in the domain of ideas save that which is demonstrated by realization. And there's a note saying, occult philosophy is founded on realism and positivism of the most absolute kind. It has no faith in dreams, but believes in the reality of hypotheses which are shown to be necessary by the knowledge of things as they are. From Fable et Symboles. In other words, what is true in the cause manifests in the effect. What is not realized does not exist. The realization of speech is the logos, properly so called. A thought is realized in becoming speech. It is realized also by signs, sounds, and representations of signs. Here is the first degree of realization. Then it is imprinted on the astrolight by means of the signs of writing or speech. It influences other minds by reflections upon them. It is refracted by crossing the diaphany of other men. It assumes new forms and proportions. It is translated into acts and modifies the world. This is the last degree of realization. Men who are born into a world modified by an idea bear away with them the mark thereof, and it is thus that the word is made flesh. The mark of the disobedience of Adam, preserved in the astral light, could be effaced only by the stronger mark of the obedience of the Savior. And thus, the original sin and redemption of the world can be explained in a natural and magical sense. The astral light, or soul of the world, was the instrument of Adam's omnipotence. It became afterwards that of his punishment, being corrupted and troubled by his sin, which intermingled in impure reflection with those primitive images which composed the book of universal science for his still virgin imagination. The astral light, depicted in ancient symbols by the serpent devouring its tail, represents alternately malice and prudence, time and eternity, tempter and redeemer. For this light, being the vehicle of life, is an auxiliary alike of good and evil, and it may be taken not only for the fiery form of Satan, but for the body of the Holy Ghost. Devil card indeed, huh? It is the instrument of warfare in angelic battles and feeds indifferently both the flames of hell and the lightnings of Saint Michael. It may be compared to a horse having a nature analogous to the chameleon, ever reflecting the armor of his rider. The astral light is the realization or form of intellectual light, as the latter is the realization or form of the divine light. The great initiator of Christianity, seeing that the astral light was overcharged with the impure reflections of Roman debauchery, sought to separate his disciples from the circumambient sphere of reflections and to concentrate them only on the interior light, so that through the medium of a common faith and enthusiasm they might communicate together by new magnetic chains, which he termed grace, and thus overcome the dissolute currents to which he gave the names of the devil and Satan, signifying their putrefaction. To oppose current to current is to renew the power of fluidic life. The revealers have therefore done scarcely more than divine, by the accuracy of their calculations, the appropriate moment for moral reactions. The law of realization produces what we call magnetic breathing. Places and objects become impregnated therewith, and this imparts to them an influence in conformity with our dominant desires, with those above all which are confirmed and realized by acts. As a fact, the universal agent or latent astral light ever seeks equilibrium. It fills the void and draws in the plenitude, which makes vice contagious, like certain physical maladies, and works powerfully in the proselytism of virtue. Hence, it is that cohabitation with antipathetic beings is a torment. Hence it is that relics, whether of saints or of great criminals, produce extraordinary results in sudden conversion and perversion. Hence it is that sexual love is often awakened by a breath or a touch, and this not only by means of contact with the person himself, but with objects which he has unconsciously touched or magnetized. There is an outbreathing and inbreathing of the soul exactly like that of the body. Whatsoever it regards as felicity, that it inhales, and it breathes forth ideas which result from its inner sensations. Diseased souls have an evil breath and vitiate their moral atmosphere. That is, they combine impure reflections with the astral light, which permeates them and establishes unwholesome currents therein. We are often assailed, to our astonishment, in society by evil thoughts which would have seemed antecedently impossible, and are not aware that they are due to some morbid proximity. This secret is of high importance, for it leads to the unveiling of consciences, one of the most incontestable and terrible powers of magical art. Magnetic respiration produces about the soul a radiation of which it is the center, and thus surrounds it with the reflection of its own works, creating for it a heaven or hell. There are no isolated acts, and it is impossible that there should be secret acts. Whatsoever we will truly, that is, everything which we confirm by our acts, remains registered in the astral light, where our reflections are preserved. These reflections influence our thought continually by the mediation of the diaphany, and it is in this sense that we become and remain the children of our works. The astral light transformed at the moment of conception into human light is the soul's first envelope, and in combination with extremely subtle fluids, it forms the ethereal body or sidereal phantom, of which Paracelsus discourses in his philosophy of intuition, Philosophia Sagax. This sidereal body, being liberated at death, attracts and for a long time preserves, through the sympathy of things homogeneous, by the reflections of the past life. If drawn into a special current by a will which is powerfully sympathetic, it manifests naturally, for there is nothing more natural than prodigies. It is thus apparitions are produced. And we got a note on that saying, our fluidic bodies attract and repel each other, following laws conformable to those of electricity. Instinctive sympathies and antipathies are produced in this manner. Moreover, they equilibrate each other, accounting for contagious hallucinations. Abnormal projections divert the light current. The perturbation centered in one subject of this kind is communicated to the most sensitive in his vicinity, till a circle of illusions is established and a whole crowd is entrained thereby. Hereof is the history of strange apparitions and popular prodigies. From Le Clef de Grand Mystery, Éliphas Lévi proceeds to explain on this basis the miracles of American mediums and compare the vertigo of table turners to the ecstasies of whirling dervishes. But we shall develop this point more fully in a chapter devoted to necromancy. The fluidic body subject, like the mass of the astral light, to, to two contrary movements, attracting on the left and repelling on the right, or reciprocally between the two sexes, begets various impulses within us and contributes to solicitudes of conscience. It is influenced frequently by reflections of other minds, and thus temptations are produced on the one hand, and on the other profound and unexpected graces. The traditional doctrine of two angels who sustain and tempt us is explained in this manner. The two forces of the astral light may be represented by a balance wherein are weighed our good intentions for the triumph of justice and the emancipation of our liberty. The astral body is not always of the same sex as the terrestrial. That is, the proportions of the two forces, varying from right to left, seem frequently to belie the visible organization, producing seeming aberrations of human passion and explaining, while in no wise morally justifying, the amorous peculiarities of Anacreon or Sappho. A skillful magnetizer should take all these subtle distinctions into account, and we shall provide in our ritual the rules for their recognition. There are two kinds of realization, the true and the fantastic. The first is the exclusive secret of magicians, the other belongs to enchanters and sorcerers. Mythologies are fantastic realizations of religious dogma. Superstitions are the sorcery of mistaken piety. But even mythologies and superstitions are more efficacious on human will than a purely speculative philosophy apart from any practice. Hence, St. Paul opposes the conquests of the folly of the cross to the inertness of human wisdom. Religion realizes philosophy by adapting it to the weaknesses of the vulgar. And we got a note saying, religion is the magical creation of a fantastic world rendered sensible by faith. It is the apparent realization of ultra-rational hypotheses, the satisfaction of a craving after wonders which is shared in common by women, children, and all who resemble them. If the Catholic religion is in sickness on any account, it is on account of the concessions which it made to the rationalism of the 18th century. from La Clef de Grand Mystery. Such is, for Kabbalists, the secret reason and occult explanation of the doctrines of incarnation and redemption. Thoughts untranslated into speech are thoughts lost for humanity. Words unconfirmed by acts are idle words, and the idle word is not far removed from falsehood. Thought formulated by speech and confirmed by acts constitutes a good work or a crime. Hence, whether in vice or virtue, there is no utterance for which we are not responsible. Above all, there are no indifferent acts. Curses and blessings produce their consequence invariably, and every action, whatsoever its nature, whether inspired by love or hate, has effects analogous to its motive, its extent, and its direction. When that emperor whose images had been mutilated, raising his hand to his face, exclaimed, "I do not feel that I am injured," he was mistaken in his valuation and detracted thereby from the merit of his clemency. What man of honor could behold undisturbed an insult offered to his portrait? And did such insults, inflicted even unknown to ourselves, react on us by a fatal influence? Were the effects of bewitchment actual? As indeed an adept cannot doubt, how much more imprudent and ill-advised would seem this utterance of the good emperor. There are persons whom we can never offend with impunity, and if the injury we have done them is mortal, we begin forthwith to die. There are those also whom we never meet in vain, whose mere glance alters the direction of our life. The basilisk who slays by a look is no fable. It is a magical allegory. Generally speaking, it is bad for health to have enemies, and we can never brave with impunity the reprobation of anyone. Before opposing ourselves to a given force or current, we must be well assured that we possess the contrary force, or are with the stream of the contrary current. Otherwise, we shall be crushed or struck down, and many sudden deaths have no other cause than this. The terrible visitation, keep that in mind, Goetia people who don't need the angels. Oh, yeah, there's no connection there. They don't, that whole idea that they balance each other out, that's just, I can't find anything that backs that up. Oh, you mean except for like Cosmic P, but okay. The terrible visitations of Nadab and Abihu, of Osa, of Ananias and Sapphira were occasioned by electric currents of outraged convictions. The sufferings of the Ursulines of Loudun, the nuns of Louviers, and the convulsionaries of Jansenism were identical in principle and are explicable by the same occult natural laws. Had not urban grandeur been immolated, one of two things would have occurred. Either the possessed nuns would have died in frightful convulsions, or the phenomena of diabolical frenzy would have so gained in strength and influence epidemically that grandeur, notwithstanding his knowledge and his reason, would also have become hallucinated, and to such a degree that he would have denounced himself like the unhappy Gofferty, or would otherwise have perished suddenly, with all the appalling characteristics of poisoning or of divine vengeance. In the 18th century, the unfortunate poet Gilbert fell a victim to his audacity in braving the current of opinion and even of philosophical fanaticism which characterized his epoch. Guilty of philosophical treason, he died raving mad, possessed by the most incredible terrors, as if God himself had punished him for defending his cause out of season. As a fact, he perished by reason of a law of nature of which assuredly he knew nothing. He set himself against an electric current and was struck down as by lightning. And we've got a footnote saying, the reference is to Nicolas Joseph Laurent Gilbert, a French poet who was born in 1751 and died in 1780 as the result of an accident. His end does not seem to justify the extravagant statements of Lévi. He was an eminent satirist who made enemies by attacking the philosophy and personalities of the 18th century, including Voltaire and Diderot. Had Marat not been assassinated by Charlotte Corday, he would have been destroyed infallibly by a reaction of public feeling. It was the execration of decent people which afflicted him with leprosy, and he would have had to succumb thereto. The reprobation excited by the massacre of St. Bartholomew was the sole cause of the atrocious disease and death of Charles IX, while had not Henry IV been sustained by an immense popularity which he owed to the projecting power of sympathetic force of his astral life, he would scarcely have outlived his conversion, but would have perished under the contempt of Protestants, combined with the suspicion and ill will of Catholics. Unpopularity may be a proof of integrity and courage, but never of policy or prudence. The wounds inflicted by opinion are mortal for statesmen. We may recall the premature and violent end of many illustrious persons whom it would be inexpedient to mention here. The brandings of public opinion may be often great injustices, but nonetheless they condemn their victims to failure and are often a death sentence. On the other hand, acts of injustice done to a single individual can and should, if unatoned, cause the ruin of an entire nation or of a whole society. This is what is called the cry of blood. For at the root of every injustice there is the germ of homicide. By reason of these terrible laws of solidarity, Christianity recommends so strongly the forgiveness of injuries and reconciliation. He who dies unforgiving casts himself dagger armed into eternity and condemns himself to the horrors of an eternal murder. The efficacy of paternal or maternal blessings or curses is an invincible popular tradition and belief. As a fact, the closer the bonds which unite two persons, the more terrible are the consequences of hatred between them. The brand of Althea consuming the life of Meleager is the mythological symbol of this terrible power. Let parents be ever on their guard, for no one can kindle hell in his own blood, or devote his own issue to misfortune without being himself burnt and made wretched. To pardon is never a crime, but to curse is always a danger and an evil action. All right. Okay. And then chapter 8 of Ritual, a warning to the imprudent. The operations of science are not devoid of danger, as we have stated several times. They may end in madness for those who are not established firmly on the basis of the supreme, absolute, and infallible reason. Terrible and incurable diseases can be occasioned by excessive nervous excitement. Swoons and death itself, as a consequence of cerebral congestion, may result from imagination when it is impressed and terrified unduly. We cannot sufficiently dissuade nervous persons and those who are naturally disposed to exaltation, women, young people, and all who are not habituated in perfect self control and command of fear. In the same way, there can be nothing more dangerous than to make magic a pastime, or, as some do, part of an evening's entertainment. That one is worth repeating. In the same way, there can be nothing more dangerous than to make magic a pastime, or, as some do, part of an evening's entertainment. Even magnetic experiments performed under such conditions can only exhaust the subjects, mislead opinions, and defeat science. The mysteries of life and death cannot be made sport of with impunity, and things which are to be taken seriously must be treated not only seriously, but also with the greatest reserve. Never yield to the desire of convincing others by phenomena. The most astounding would prove nothing to those who are not convinced already. They can be attributed always to ordinary artifices, and the magus included among the more or less skillful followers of Robert Houdin or Hamilton. To require prodigies as a warrant for believing in science is to show oneself unworthy or incapable of science. Sancta Sanctis. Contemplate the 12th figure of the tarot keys. Remember the grand symbol of Prometheus and be silent. All those magi who divulged their works died violently, and many were driven to suicide, like Cardan, Schröpfer, Cagliostro, and others. The magus should live in retirement and be approached with difficulty. Here is the import of the ninth key of the tarot, where the initiate appears as a hermit enveloped completely in his cloak. This notwithstanding, such retirement must not be one of isolation. Attachments and friendships are necessary, but they must be chosen with care and preserved at all price. The magus must have also another avocation than that of magician. Magic is not a trade. Magic is not a trade. Magic is not a trade. Goodness gracious. In order to devote ourselves to ceremonial magic, we must be free from anxious preoccupations. We must be in a position to procure all instruments of the science and be able to make them when needed. We must possess, moreover, an inaccessible laboratory in which there will be no danger of being ever surprised or disturbed. Then, and this is an indispensable condition, we must know how to equilibrate forces and restrain the zeal of our own initiative. This is the meaning of the eighth key of Hermes, wherein a woman is seated between two pillars, with an upright sword in one hand and a balance in the other. To equilibrate forces, they must be maintained simultaneously and caused to act alternately. The use of the balance represents this double action. The same arcanum is typified by the dual cross in the Pentacles of Pythagoras and Ezekiel. See the plate which appears at page 161 in the Doctrine, where the crosses equilibrate each other and the planetary signs are in permanent opposition. Thus, Venus is the equilibrium of the works of Mars. Mercury moderates and fulfills the operations of the sun and moon. Saturn balances Jupiter. It was by means of this antagonism between the ancient gods that Prometheus, that is to say, the genius of science, contrived to enter Olympus and carry off fire from heaven. Is it necessary to speak more clearly? The milder and calmer you are, the more effective will be your anger. The more energetic you are, the more valuable will be your forbearance. The more skillful you are, the better will you profit by your intelligence and even by your virtues. The more indifferent you are, the more easily will you make yourself loved. This is a matter of experience in the moral order and is realized literally in the sphere of action. Human passions produce blindly the opposites of their unbridled desire when they act without direction. Excessive love arouses antipathy. Blind hate counteracts and scourges itself. Vanity leads to abasement and the most cruel humiliations. Thus, the great master revealed a mystery of positive magical science when he said, "Forgive your enemies, do good to those that hate you, so shall ye heap coals of fire upon their heads." Perhaps this kind of pardon may seem hypocrisy and bear a strong likeness to refined vengeance. But we must remember that the magus is sovereign, and a sovereign never avenges because he has the right to punish. In the exercise of this right, he performs his duty and is implacable as justice. Implacable as justice. Let it be observed for the rest, so that no one may misinterpret my meaning, that it is a question of chastising evil by good and opposing mildness to violence. If the exercise of virtue be a flagellation for vice, no one has the right to demand that the latter should be spared, or that we should take pity on its shame and its sufferings. The man who dedicates himself to works of science must take moderate daily exercise, abstain from prolonged vigils, and follow a wholesome and regular rule of life. He must avoid the effluvia of putrefaction, the neighborhood of stagnant water, and indigestible or impure food. Above all, he must seek daily relaxation from magical preoccupations amongst material cares or in ordinary work, whether artistic, industrial, or commercial. The way to see well is not to be always looking, and he who spends his whole life upon one object will end without attaining it. Another precaution must be observed equally, and that is never to experiment when ill. The ceremonies being, as we have said, artificial methods for creating a habit of will, become unnecessary when the habit is confirmed. It is in this sense, and addressing himself solely to perfect adepts, that Paracelsus prescribes ceremonial work in his occult philosophy. But procedure must be simplified progressively before it is dispensed with altogether, in proportion to the experience we obtain in acquired powers and established habit in the exercise of extra natural will. All right, we did it. Chapter 8 of Doctrine and Ritual. There you go. There you have it. Just like when you're hitting the gym, sometimes those rest days are the days when you actually make the gains instead of when you're just hitting it 7 days a week for months and months straight. But I get it. You can get real excited. You can get real worried that, oh no, my gains. Oh no, what's happened to my gains? I'm lifting and yep. Same with magic. Same with most things. But you'll figure that out if you haven't, most likely. And also, once again, the dangers of the madness, the dangers of doing things with false understanding or no understanding. Some things you're fine to start doing, but yeah, you definitely also want to kind of be studying into how and why you're doing them. But other things that I see people just picking up and going willy nilly with, all because it's internet trends, well, might not be such a good idea, but hey, time will tell for sure, I suppose. Balance, equilibrium, very important things to be keeping in mind. And also, he said something about what was it? How he worded it about like the eternal truths. Yeah, the mysteries of life and death cannot be made sport of with impunity, and things which are to be taken seriously must be treated not only seriously, but with the greatest reserve. So, yep, you really, at times, you'll get communicated things that you're not supposed to be posting on viral TikTok reels and all of that. Or you'll get communicated things that, like, where momentarily you'll go kind of crazy. You really will. It'll hit you, and it'll hit you like it'll scare you. It'll definitely. But what's crazy about those things too is often if they come to you a little early, like you get that little glimpse. Well, again, with like that mercy of God and the veil of Maya being a mercy and all that, you'll kind of forget it. Like you'll remember that you encountered something profound, but then you'll kind of forget it for a while at least, and then maybe when you're more ready, it'll come back to you. Okay, well, that was a fun one. That was a quick one. We'll get back at it tomorrow. And then yeah, I'm still thinking that we'll go ahead and pick up another class B, probably a short one, probably one about journey into other worlds, but potentially I don't know. It may be something else, but I do think that one would probably be a good one. It's short. It's pretty important. I think it's also going to sync up with the Circuit of Force study Travis is doing, as well as some of what we're learning here with this Éliphas Lévi book and what we've already studied in our different groups. So be on the lookout for that. And I appreciate you all very much. One True Goddess, always great to see you. I hope you're having such a good day, and you're very welcome. Thank you. The devil card. We didn't pull that one for no reason, that's for sure. Maybe in your free time, you might want to look more into, at least if you're not already familiar with the devil card and the ideas behind the devil and Satan and Lucifer and Prometheus, Samael, all these different figures, Typhon, Set, and just see how those things connect together. Maybe that'll be a fun little homework project for some of you. And all right, well, I don't really got much else to say. I just wish you a wonderful day. And again, my Gnosis, congratulations to you and everybody else. Congratulations also on just being here in this life and doing your very best. It can be difficult at times for sure, but keep a solid foundation, keep control of the context, and keep on pursuing the practices. Like he said, like Éliphas Lévi said too, if you just are using it as a pastime or as a nightly entertainment, well, that definitely can be a very dangerous thing. But I guess we do got to keep in mind that he was writing in a little bit different time. However, I do speak based on things I've seen and observed. And yep, I've already kind of observed the way that for some people it's just kind of a recipe for disaster. So keep those things in mind. And other than that, I wish you guys a wonderful day. I wish you guys a wonderful whatever you got going on. Much love, many blessings. This has been Jay Balvale, and this has been Chapter 8 of Éliphas Lévi's Transcendental Magic, its Doctrine and Ritual. Bye-bye.